Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about side characters we wanted to see more of. Whether they played multiple roles or whether they showed up once or twice and we were left hanging, waiting for them to come back. There are a lot of interesting characters that could have been fun to see again and again, and we're going to touch on some of our favorites. But before we start on that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Ann.
Hi, I'm Ann Wicker, a former journalist and writer, but now I'm a writer and editor, and I edit all kinds of books. I came late to the Supernatural family, but went right down the rabbit hole, and I love talking about Supernatural.
Okay, Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and editor, and I started watching Supernatural when that first pilot aired, and I watched it all the way down to that last episode, and it made
Oh,
I'm
I'm
okay.
Gail Z.
I'm okay, really.
I know. There's treatment. We hang in there together with each other.
Talking with you guys helps.
It does. Um, I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. All my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11. Binge watched 11 seasons in time for the start of season 12. Went down the rabbit hole and have never hit bottom yet. Hope I never do. Proudly bear the title of obsessed fan. So, there were 15 years, 327 episodes left room for an awful lot of guest characters and guest actors. But we had some favorites. So let's just go around till we run out of time and talk about the ones we wanted to see more of. And start us off.
okay. I'm gonna go with Lee Webb, who was in the episode called Last Call in the last season. Um, and I'm a big fan of the actor who played Lee, Christian Kane, who is also a personal friend of Jensen Ackles. And I just was, I had hoped for years that he would be on the show. And it was a good character. They had history. And I just kept thinking, oh, they could have done several other shows with that character, in sort of in flashbacks to when during the period when Sam was in Stanford and Dean was, either hunting by himself or hunting with his father. And I just thought that Lee was a great character, and
Mhm.
he could have been seen a lot more.
Well, and it's funny because those of us who do read fan fiction see a lot of him there because he is a favorite side character in fan fiction. So I sometimes forget that we only got to see him once in the show.
I know.
Um, so, Electra?
Charlie Bradbury, played
Definitely.
by Felicia Day. I think the first one was the girl with the, oh God,
Dungeons and Dragon tattoo.
Dragon's tattoo. I love the fact that they kept giving her names that called back to science fiction. Um,
Mhm.
she is a larger than life character. I love Felicia Day in everything that she appears in, but every time we got to see Charlie, the episodes were standout episodes. Um, and the character grew from somebody who was full of herself and cool and danced like no one was watching, which she totally did, to someone who just pushed herself beyond her limits. And then we got to see once we got to Apocalypse World, we got to see the other version of Charlie, who really, was a military commander and just did things that our Charlie maybe couldn't do. It was great. We got to see all these different facets, and they looked on her as the boys looked on her as maybe a little sister, which was great because, well, she wasn't there. They weren't her type. She totally was their type, but
She was a lot more interested in Dorothy.
Yeah.
well, yeah, and just that whole scene where they found that out, where they were trying to talk her through flirting with a guard to get information when um he just totally wasn't her type. And it just the comic relief in that episode is they're trying to deal, she's the one who has to go up against one of the worst villains we had, Dick Roman, who
Mhm.
was, really, really scary and powerful. And once she knew that, she was terrified. And they were scared to send her in there. And yet they did, and they talked her through it, and it was great.
Mhm. Yeah, Charlie was fantastic.
Absolutely. And that the Oz episode
Mhm.
was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Uh, to that, and just, well, and while they're doing it, what they gave her a gift, and they all binged the first season of Game of Thrones together while they were waiting for the program to work. I
Yeah.
mean, I would have loved to be there with them watching Game of Thrones for the first time. I mean, they're Charlie was somebody I wanted to be best friends with.
Mhm.
And she was just too cool. And
Mhm.
also, I will give a call out to, I loved that episode Last Call, and I loved Lee, and thank you for that, Anne.
Yeah. Well, this guy kind of falls on bad guys you love to hate or you hate to love. Victor Hendrickson. He was competent. He was a badass. He was in about 4 episodes, but he seemed like the kind of person who could eventually be brought around to understanding what was really going on.
Well, he was starting to in that
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
So he was starting to clue in that the boys were not just, psychopaths. They were really telling the truth about all this supernatural stuff. And for as much as they got by on fake FBI badges and Bobby's phone bank and all of that, having some real friends in actual law enforcement would have come in handy in a lot of cases. Just people who could give them a heads up or look the other way or make sure that the system lost a few convenient documents. And Henriksen, I thought, was, even though he was an opponent to them, he was an honorable character. And uh, I think they could have done more with him depending on where the story had gone. And the actor was terrific. The character was terrific. So yeah, he could have done more. Back to you, Anne.
Well, I have to go back to one of my favorites is Benny. And he was in a lot of episodes. And but I thought we could have done he could have had his own spinoff show as far as I was concerned. And um he was a strong character. He had charisma. He had just the episode where he has gone back to live in Louisiana and is helping at the restaurant owned by his granddaughter or great
Mm-hmm.
granddaughter, I forget, um, is one of my favorites. And I thought that he was a worthy friend for Dean, and it just really he was I just thought they could have done a whole lot more with him as an ally. And it also taught Dean more about that not all supernatural beings are monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really thought that the purgatory episodes were done well and showcased um, that character's different sides, between purgatory and being fighting all the time, and then he's in a diner cooking. It's really he did well showing the contrast, and it showed that kind of like the Winchesters, he could be a chameleon about where he needed to be, and fitting in into the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Elektra?
Well, you grabbed mine because I love Benny and I wish we could have seen more and more of Benny ever. So I'm going to go with Gordon Walker.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there could have been more of Gordon before he became irredeemable.
Mm-hmm.
He was a really good hunter who just never made he saw everything in black and white.
Yeah.
It was either here or it was there. It was good or it was evil. And if they had been able to convince him that there was a little tiny bit of wiggle room, Gordon could have been a fantastic ally for them. And
Mm-hmm.
also, Sterling K. Brown, man. I mean, he could have given Gordon more nuance. I mean,
Yeah.
he's certainly capable of it, but they never gave him the chance. And I would have loved to see him there backing them up as a reliable ally when they needed someone
Mm-hmm.
in some of the later episodes when things got really, really dicey and they were going up against some of the bigger bads.
Well, and I know the show played up the isolation of the brothers, where it didn't give them, especially in the later seasons, um, a lot of allies on the board with them. Where, and I get, you can only afford so many actors in an episode, and they were focusing on the boys and how once Joe and Ellen and Bobby and those folks were off the board, how isolated they were. But in my mind, in reality, um, it would have gone a lot better if they'd have had more people. Some of those fights would have gone a lot easier if they'd have had more people on the board with them.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to come up with Patrick, the witch from the
Oh,
episode where Bobby loses his. They're playing for years, and Bobby loses his years, and then Dean loses time, and Dean, as an old crotchety man, arguing with Bobby was just terrific. And then, of course, Sam saves the day. But Patrick was charming, and as we found out later, not totally bad, because he ended up helping his girlfriend, who was unnaturally immortal, be able to go to heaven to see her daughter, to be with her daughter. She was ready to go. Um, Once again, somebody who could have turned up as an interesting ally, source of information, conduit. He had possibilities, and the actor was absolutely charming. So
Oh,
I know sometimes they didn't get people back because of commitments and schedules and all that, but he's on my wish list of people that I wish we could have seen more of.
absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Anne, how about you? Next one.
Well, the next one, I would have loved to have seen more of Annie Hawkins. She
Mm-hmm.
was the female hunter that was in the episode called Of Grave Importance. And one of the funny little asides in that was that apparently she slept with Sam Dean and Bobby. And
Almost reminds me of the Indiana Jones comment, I was the next man.
exactly, exactly. And and Sam offered the excuse, well, I was soulless at the time. But anyway, I just thought she was an intriguing character and could have helped. And again, kind of like Lee Webb, there could have been episodes where she turned up as an ally. And obviously, she had, I mean, they talk about it, but we could have seen those episodes. And that really, plus the fact, there are female hunters
Mhm.
that we see over the years, and of course, Donna turns into one, and Jody turns into a hunter, and Mary Winchester. But just somebody um, who was more, I hesitate to say neutral, but somebody who is more out there as
Mhm.
completely as a hunter, and I really would have loved to have seen more of her.
Mhm. Yeah, she was. she had both feet in the hunting life. Unlike,
Mhm.
Jody and Donna and even Mary, um, Annie was a hunter. She wasn't trying to be a mom. She wasn't trying to be a sheriff. This is what she did.
Yeah,
And so she was very much like the boys and like Bobby. And it was interesting to see that. I would have, yeah, loved to have seen more of her.
yeah.
Electra?
Elliot Ness. I mean, he was a hunter. I wish they'd found a way to bring him into more than one episode, or gosh, what a spin-off that would have been.
And the older
Wow.
woman who was kind of his sidekick partner research, she
He's
was kind of his
Bobby.
Sam. Yes,
She was his Bobby.
Bobby.
Oh, she was awesome. She was like the brains of the Untouchables that we never knew about.
And the
They
way and she handled Dean so, you know, she wasn't rattled by him at all.
That was just so beautifully put together. I mean, if they'd come up with something like that for a spin-off instead of the insane thing they tried to do in Chicago with mobster families,
Yeah.
that might have worked.
Yeah.
I would have totally watched it.
Oh yeah. Supernatural, the Roaring Twenties. Yeah. Elliot Ness going up against mobsters.
And
Gee,
Al Capone could have been a demon.
come to think of it, I actually have a book series that sort of does that.
Of course you
Of
do.
course I do. Uh, yeah, my Joe Mack series, the first season is set in the Roaring Twenties, and Elliot Ness does show up, but not exactly the same as getting more of him on actual Supernatural. How about Ash? Ash hung out in the Roadhouse, his party in the front, no business in the front, party in the back with his mullet. He was a computer genius, but he came across like a total stoner. Um, I would have loved to have seen all of the Roadhouse crew for longer, but Ash, just was such an interesting character, played so well by that actor.
Oh yeah, Chad did such a great job with Ash. He was just he's one of my favorite characters, and he just um he would go from from stoner to genius, and you get whiplash.
Hmm. Electra?
Oh, no. Anne, you
Anne.
skipped
Oh,
Anne.
me, okay. Well, I have to continue with my theme of women in supernatural and go for Missouri mostly.
Yes.
Because I understand that she had commitments and could not return as that character until until that much later episode. But I just wish that she had been there for the boys in whatever capacity, in so many ways, in so many episodes,
Mhm.
that where she could have helped, as a resource. And she was a hunter in her own way, but I just adore that character and wish she could have had a bigger part in Supernatural.
Well, can you imagine if Dean could have gone to her for advice when Sam was soulless? And,
Ex-
you know, no more quibbling about this. Whoa, my heavens, what's wrong with Sam? She would have just said straight up, the boy doesn't have a soul, Dean.
yeah, yeah,
And that would have simplified a lot of things.
oh yeah, yeah,
As they desperately tried to figure it out.
Yes.
yeah.
Electra, do you have one?
Oh yeah. Oh, I have more. Well, death. We did not
Oh.
see enough of death. I mean, and honestly,
Old
I
Death or New Death?
I like them both, but let's start with Old Death because
Mhm.
Old Death was just so awesome. I
Mhm.
wanted to sit down and pick the fast food chain of your choice and just chat with him over whatever, chicken tenders, loaded French fries, whatever. some greasy fried food and, a little bit of a beverage, and let's just sit down and talk about the heat death of the universe or
Mhm.
something.
And talk about an entrance. His
Mhm.
entrance in that first
Best
episode.
ever. Julian Richings had such presence as Death. And, the cane, the way he held himself, everything. So I was completely floored when he was a guest at a supernatural convention and came out onto the stage skipping. Skipping. I
I'm convinced that he did that just to floor you,
yeah,
Gail.
I think he did. Just
Because it was
just because
different than the character, and it means that he's just a good actor.
yeah. No, I loved it, but that was absolutely memorable. Um, let's see. Now you guys have gotten ahead of me. Rufus Turner. We just did a panel on Bobby and Rufus and talked about what a great duo they were and how they could have been maybe not a complete spin-off, but we definitely would have loved to see more buddy flick team up between the two of them. And Rufus was a grumpy old codger, grumpier than Bobby. Um, but there was just so much potential there, especially with, you know, two old men and a ghost. Uh, they,
Two grumpy old men and a ghost.
two
Yeah.
grumpy old men and a ghost. Just the whole thing about I can't bury the body in the back. I already buried one there. Uh, you know, they played off each other so well. The actor was terrific in the role, and once again, kind of fleshing out. I know there are things you can do in book series that you can't do on TV because you don't have to pay the characters to show up in your books. But I draw on a lot of allies in my battles where Supernatural was predominantly about Sam and Dean doing this kind of on their own. Um, but every time we come up with a really good ally, and Rufus was one of those, my brain just wants to bring him in on more battles to help out. And I realize there are physical constraints with TV that you don't have when you're making the characters up in your head, but I can't help wanting to say, nah, we really needed him on board. Can you imagine if we'd have had some of these people on board later in the show when they were going up against some of the bigger bads?
The darkness,
The
think how much easier
signs.
that would have been to deal with if they'd
Hmm.
had, Rufus and maybe Gordon and Benny,
Hmm.
side order of Patrick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Back to you, Anne.
And I will also add one more person to that. If they had had Jesse
Hmm.
Turner, the little boy um that was kind of like Jack in that he was the son of a human and a demon.
Hmm.
And he had powers. I think, I mean, it implied in that episode that he would grow into powers, a lot like Jack ended up having. And I just think that they could have done a lot more with that character. And it was just one of those threads that just ended prematurely, I think. And they didn't bring him back. I mean, think about he and Jack teaming up against God.
Hmm.
You know, that was just anyway.
Well, and I imagine it's another one of those where the focus had to stay on Sam and Dean, and bringing in some of the higher powered characters would have made it too easy. But I'm sure they could have figured this out, especially since it was God.
Yeah.
Um, Elektra?
How about I don't remember if they ever gave us a name, the demon that was the equivalent of Bobby, the guy with all the phones on his desk that was doing that same research job. We saw him in one episode, and it was such a good idea that I wanted to see that, fleshed out a bit more.
Mm.
the idea that the demons who were running around chasing Sam and Dean, they also had a guy they called who gave them information.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? Because Crowley wasn't going to give them information.
Yeah, no, they had a guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in one episode, they showed him to us, and then they got rid of him. And it was just presumably he was looking up stuff in human lore, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe he had all the yellow pages, and just the idea of the stuff he would have access to, it would be all our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe he had old yearbooks from when Sam and Dean went to various schools. Just the amusement would have been endless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there could have been a lot of comedy with that.
Yeah.
Not that I wanted her to hang around and be a love interest for Sam, but if you think about it, Madison really kind of got short shrifted. Because later on there was Garth. He was a werewolf, but he was still a cool dude, and they hung out with him, and he was a buddy. Well, Madison, they were in their early phases. That was early in season one. It was still the monsters are all bad, monsters are always bad. But it's really kind of unfair that she really only seemed to have the choice of being a monster or killing herself when we find out later there are people like Garth and there are other werewolves and creatures that make moral choices aside from their nature. And so I didn't need her around as a romantic element, but it's just a shame that, she kind of got pushed into an early resolution that we find out later wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
And
Um, I really enjoyed the Alicia and Max Baines, the
yeah,
twins. And he was a witch and she was a hunter, and they'd been trained by their mother, who was a witch and a hunter. And I thought they were great characters. And I guess they were in 3 episodes, but showed up in 3 episodes. But I just really thought that they were good characters, and that whole side story could have uh again, they could have been more allies for Sam and Dean in certain situations. And I just really I was sad that
mhm,
one episode ended the way it did, and they weren't killed off exactly. So they could have come back, but anyway, I just thought they were really well done characters who could have contributed another sort of um, sister brother dynamic,
mhm,
like the brother brother dynamic. It was sort of a mirror image in a
mhm,
way.
mhm.
And I really thought they could have done something with that too.
Okay. Electra?
How about Asa Fox before he was, dead?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we heard all these stories about him, and
Yeah.
you seem to know all of these different hunters, but we never actually got to see him as a grown-up, really. Wouldn't that have been a fun character to actually have the boys cross paths with him in our view?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Uh, the stories that he apparently could have told them about their mom.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
that
Which
was
episode was he in?
silly. Huh?
Which episode was he in?
Well, he was in Celebrating the Life of Asa Fox,
Oh, okay.
where
Okay.
we got the
Yeah.
flashbacks of him being rescued by Mary as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
which presumably pushed him into being a hunter. And then we got to go to his wake.
Yeah.
And then we found out that he was Max and Alicia's father.
Yeah. I mean, that just honestly, I think all of us and Max and Alicia and Sam and Dean all would have benefited from knowing him a little better.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, Fortuna and Pax from the Gamblers. She was the one that had that roadhouse with the pool table.
She was
Mhm.
the Greek
Goddess.
goddess of
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Pax was her son, so a demigod, assumably peace. Um, they sure could have used some more luck at various times.
Yeah.
Um, and she had a axe to grind about God, aka Chuck. I loved when she,
Curly little guy.
poor little guy. Yeah, yeah, that's him.
Oh, you have met him.
Yeah. So, that could have been fun to have gotten some of those demigods, the one from fan fiction as well. Um, just to lend a hand from time to time because they were pissed at Chuck for displacing them. And, it would have been fun to see that. Well, folks, believe it or not, we may not have run through our lists, but we've run through our time. So, yeah, so many to choose from. And we picked a lot of the good ones, but there's still some good ones out there too. So,
Oh
be-
yeah.
So
before we,
watch the
yeah,
show.
yes, watch the show. Um,
True.
well, before we go, let's let people know where we can find you online. Anne?
You can find me mostly on Facebook and Instagram under my name and look for the bracelets. And I'm also on a lot of continual panels talking about supernatural and the Facebook group for, and I never remember all the letters. Kale.
Supernatural TFWNC, Team Free
That's
Will,
it.
North Carolina.
Yep.
Okay. Electra?
My website is untilmidnight.com. That has links to all my socials. I'm mostly on Mastodon, where you can find me on Monday nights from 7 until 8, where we as a group answer 4 to 5 questions on a random topic, and everybody is free to join in under the hashtag WriteFans.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell them right, you'll find me on all the social medias. But mostly, I'm here on Continual. So thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.